All right, folks, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to the introductory webinar of the Great Lakes Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program. My name is Jumana Vasi. I'm the director of the Great Lakes Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program. I'm based at the Minneapolis Foundation, and I am pleased to be your host today. Our goals today are to give you an overview of the program, help you understand the application process, give you a description of the different grant programs, and we'll have time at the end to answer questions. In the meantime, please submit your questions through the Q&A and we'll answer as many as we can real time. Before we get started, I do want to take a minute to just express my gratitude to everyone who helped us get here today. In addition to the 5 of us that you'll see on today's webinar, there have been probably hundreds of people that have helped us get here. And it started out with partners who encouraged our coalition to apply for the program and sent more than 30 letters of support, gave us suggestions, let us know what you needed from this grant making program. It's been almost a year since we received the award, and so it's taken IT, comms, grants administration, finance, and colleagues from all over across our organizations working together for 12 months to get us to this point. I want to thank our technical assistance providers, the Great Lakes TICTAC and the Big Justice TICTAC, who've offered suggestions and counsel along the way, as well as our 10-member regional advisory committee, who are tasked with giving us guidance and who'll be reviewing, scoring, and making decisions on grants. And I will really want to also thank our EPA, Environmental Protection Agency colleagues, in particular, Christina Presmanes, our project officer, and Marisa Valdez, who is our contact at headquarters. And of course, we couldn't do it without all of you and the many of you who've sat through previous iterations of this workshop to ask questions, make suggestions, taking it all in. We couldn't be here without you. So without further ado, let us get started. And the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce my colleagues so that you can know who else is on our team. And first up, I'd like to bring in Anthina Gore, Urban Outreach Program Director at the Midwest Environmental Justice Network. Hi, Anthina.
Hi, Jumana. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. Again, sincere gratitude for you all joining us. Much gratitude to everyone who's been on this journey towards federal funding for these environmental justice and public health programs for so many decades. We recognize that and we appreciate you so much. My name, as Jumana said, is Anthina Gore. I'm with the Midwest Environmental Justice Network, serving as the outreach director for the urban constituency. So if you are inside of an urban area, metropolitan statistical area, you can reach out to me for help. The Midwest Environmental Justice Network has been in this game for about 15 years. Our mission is to connect and strengthen frontline and grassroots organizations to achieve environmental justice in the Midwest. We are led by and accountable to our network members, and we achieve our mission by raising and distributing general operating funds, supporting capacity building, and building translocal and regional power across campaigns. And we're here being a part of this program because we know what it took for you all to step forward and say, we need more support. We need to build more power from the ground up. And so that is what we are representing. Again, Anthina Gore, Midwest Environmental Justice Network, reach out anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthina. Next, I'd like to bring up Tori Solis, Climate Initiative Coordinator for Region 5 at the NDN Collective. Welcome, Tori.
Hello, bonjour everyone. Again, I also want to express gratitude for those who have walked before us and have gotten to us to where we are today, and as well as gratitude to everyone that is present today. My name is Tori Solis. I am the Climate Justice Initiative Coordinator at NDN Collective. My role at NDN is to ensure that outreach is conducted to Indigenous communities, not only federally recognized tribe, but state recognized tribes, as well as 501c3 Indigenous-led organizations. Our mission at NDN Collective is to build a collective power of Indigenous peoples, communities, and nations to exercise our inherent right to self-determination while fostering a world that is built on a foundation of justice and equity for all people and Mother Earth. Again, my name is Tori Solis, and I am working with Indigenous communities on conducting outreach. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. Big witch.
Thank you, Tori. Next, Dr. Ryan Alanese, Director of Rural and Remote Outreach at the REAMP Network. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit more with you about this program. Thank you for attending, and of course, thank you to all those who have gone before us. I am with the REAMP Network. We're a network of 140 organizations working to equitably eliminate greenhouse gas emissions in the Midwest by 2050. My focus is on rural and remote outreach. So if you're in communities that are less than 50,000 people, all the way down to hundreds of people, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share information about the program.
Thank you, Ryan. And my colleague at the Minneapolis Foundation, Joanne Stately, Senior Vice President of Impact.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to be able to say thank you, as my other colleagues have before me, for this opportunity for the Minneapolis Foundation to be the recipient and being able to partner with Midwest Environmental Justice Network, Indian Collective, and REAMP to make sure that these funds are going to be distributed across the 6 states that represent Region 5 as the Great Lakes region. This has been, as you've heard from Jemana, a labor of love and process over the last 12 months. And that only captures the last 12 months. As you all are aware, you have been behind this movement for years and made this possible. And again, we're so appreciative that we get to play this role and that we are going to take this responsibility with both honor and with all the seriousness to make this a successful program for all of you that are out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, colleagues. So that's part of the team. I'm glad it's been an honor to work with everybody. And so I've understood that the chat is disabled, so everything has to be routed through Q&A. So I hope that will not be a problem for folks. All right, let's get into this. What is our Great Lakes Thriving Communities grant making goal? It is to distribute $40 million in grants for community-led innovative projects related to environmental justice, environment, climate, public health, but not just to make those grants, but to ensure that this process strengthens the overall capacity of our movement of environmental justice work and organizations across urban, rural, and tribal areas. And to break down these barriers in federal funding, to do that by breaking down barriers, to help take back the veil and help all of us understand how federal funding works and how to navigate grants that we receive. Region 5 is this beautiful 6-state area surrounding the Great Lakes. It includes Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, Wisconsin, and our 36 federally recognized tribal nations. Grants must do 2 things for the Thriving Communities Grant Making Program. They must address environmental justice issues, and they must support disadvantaged communities as defined by the EPA. So environmental justice, per the EPA's definition, is the just treatment and meaningful involvement of all people in decision-making and activities that affect human health and the environment. When we talk about all people, it is regardless of income, race, color, national origin, tribal affiliation, disability, regardless of political affiliation, religious affiliation, or language. And this definition, which I'm not going to read around disadvantaged communities, has been translated into a map. And you can find this map on EJ's screen, and we'll share those links with you, if not through the chat. Apparently, maybe through the Q&A, but we'll get those to you. They're also available on our website, but EJ Screen is the mapping tool, and you can see in the circled area, brings in data from two different maps, the Justice 40 CJust map and the IRA Disadvantaged Communities map. You can go through our instructions. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes at the most, and you can see if your community or the communities, plural, that you're working in are orange. That's a clear and easy way to know that your work fits into this grant making program. Eligible applicants include tribal governments and intertribal consortia, Native American and Indigenous-led organizations, nonprofit organizations, including fiscally sponsored projects and state-recognized charities, also local governments and institutions of higher education. We had a few advanced questions come through that state entities are not eligible for grants in this program. Public school districts are considered units of local government. So an individual public school cannot apply directly, but their school district could apply. A nonprofit school could also apply under the nonprofit designations, the charter school. Within that arena of within our region, within eligible applicants and disadvantaged communities working and projects working on environmental justice, we further prioritize for this grant making program federally recognized tribes, Native American, Indigenous, and community-based nonprofits or fiscally sponsored projects with budgets under 5 million and fewer than 10 staff. We also prioritize communities or municipalities that have received federal or state disaster declarations over the last 5 years and communities with populations under 10,000. Our grant distribution goals is that we plan to distribute at least 200 grants across the region, making sure that every state gets its fair share, and also to try to keep to this graph to also ensure that rural, tribal, and urban communities all receive funding, and that we have, as you heard from our partners, intentional outreach to each of these communities. Our Thriving Communities grants are best suited for building experience and internal capacity to apply for other federal, state, and local government grants. This is a great program as a first step to develop your capacity, your systems, your process for managing government money. These grants are also great if you have existing work that is currently not funded by another source. You do not need to develop a new program for this. We welcome work that you're already doing that you need additional resources for. So on that note, you can use these funds to complement other projects, to expand or build out something you already have funding for. Of course, no double counting. You can't use our funding to pay for something you already have funding for, but to complement that work, this is a great opportunity for that. You can use these funds as matching funds for other federal government or private grants. These can be used as matching funds. And we're going to talk about our grant making tiers in a minute, but this is also a great place for shovel-ready new projects. If you already have the plans developed, you've just been waiting for the right opportunity, we have a set of grants for that as well. Issue areas are very broad for us. What we want is for you to apply for the needs of your community's highest priority needs related to environmental justice, climate, public health. So here are some representative buckets, but your work, as long as you can explain why it's a high priority and has an environmental justice or connected public health, environmental climate impact, it's eligible for funding in this program. So some of the buckets are listed here: environmental health, healthy homes, access to healthy food, but you do not feel limited by this list. Our grants are divided into 3 tiers as designated by the EPA. And so tier 1, this is just an overview slide, and I'm going to go into further details in a moment. But tier 1 is intended for activities related to assessment and engagement. Those are 1-year grants of up to $150,000. And tier 1 is really best suited for severely capacity constrained organizations, entry-level groups, the folks that are just sort of needing to get maybe some initial funds or are still in the starting out stages. Tier 1 is especially well suited for that. Doesn't mean you can't apply to the other tiers, but that was as we get into it, you'll see tier 1 is really intended to be very supportive of severely capacity constrained applicants. Tier 2 is intended for community education and planning. So you sort of know what the problems are, you have some of that data and an understanding, and now you're ready to plan around solutions. These are up to 2-year grants of up to $250,000. And then tier 3 is for project development and implementation. You know you understand the problem, you have the data that you need, you've done the planning, and now you're ready to do a pilot or get into project implementation. And those are our largest set of grants that are up to $350,000 for up to 2 years. All of these applications are open as of last week. And through a non-competitive process, there are also a number of tier 1 grants intended for severely capacity constrained communities of up to $75,000. And those are invitation only. Tier 1, assessment and engagement. This is for efforts that lead to the understanding of local environmental justice, environment, climate, health issues and so eligible activities include, but are not limited to, the ones listed here, like mapping, air quality sensors, sampling, testing, and monitoring of air, water, or soil samples, research, surveys, studies, power mapping, public engagement, and public education, all related to understanding the issues that you would like to address further. Tier 2 is sort of the next phase. It's community education and planning. This is once you have a strong understanding of the issues that you are trying to address. Now it's about getting the community together to design, inform, and highlight plan for solutions. This can include developing project plans, communications and outreach plans, curricula, toolkits, guidelines, all of the kinds of things that go into planning and related community education. A highlight of this tier is that you can use up to 50% of the award for property acquisition related to your planning activities. And tier 3 is around project development and implementation. So you know the problem, you've done the planning, and you're ready to get started. And again, up to 50% of the award can be used for property acquisition and eligible activities. Here are some examples. And again, everything we've listed here are examples, but we really want to support the work that you need in your communities that are related to the overall intent, whether it's assessment, planning, or implementation. So here you can be doing projects related to cleaning up contaminated sites, launching specific energy or water efficiency programs, internships, or program-related acquisition, renovation, or construction. I know many of you are asking, do I have to go in order? No, absolutely not. You can apply in any order. You can also apply to each of these tiers at the same time. You can only receive 1 grant, but you could apply to all 3. So you are welcome to apply. And you need not go in any order. All right, here are some further details about how the grants are distributed. So tier 1 grants, I mentioned that they're intended for capacity constrained organizations. So these ones at the lower levels of up to $150,000 for up to 1-year grants can be paid out on a milestone basis, 50% upfront once the grant agreement and milestones have been confirmed, and then 50% about at the halfway mark once you've achieved the mutually agreed upon milestones. There is you still need to demonstrate that the funds are used in allowable ways, but you don't need to have that very strict budget line item accounting in the same way that tier 2 and tier 3 grants will require. Tier 2 and tier 3 grants operate the way that other federal grant programs operate. They will be paid out as monthly reimbursements based on your submission of an invoice. Obviously, with that invoice is about allowable project expenses. But we know that there might be case times where you need a big ticket purchase or a major payment, and we will work with you on a case-by-case basis to provide advance payments in those instances. We also will be able to work with a small number of severely capacity constrained organizations to receive advance payments of up to 10% of the total award. So we are doing our best to navigate that, but for the most part, tier 2 and tier 3, if you've had a federal grant experience before, you'll recognize this. And if not, this is the place to build that experience of following all of the federal grant requirements directly. What does our grant process look like? So I say 4 to 8 months because I've built time in on the front end, knowing that it might take some time for folks to develop their process. Our review process is intended to take 2 to 4 months, but it can take longer. So that's why we've sort of been generous here on what it really can look like from start to finish. Step number 1 is doing what you are doing, learning about the grant requirements. Thank you for coming to this webinar. We will have other resources posted on our websites. Our partners will be hosting events to help you understand the different elements of the program. Join as many as you need to. You can reach out to us with questions. You can reach out to the technical assistance centers on this front end as well. The early points that you do need to do is confirm your community is designated as disadvantaged on that EJ screen map. So those are the first things you do. And then number 2 is we ask you to submit an intake form. We will be sharing links to our platform with you. And once you register on our online Salesforce platform, which just takes about 5 minutes, and we have a video to help you with that, we ask you to take another 10 to 15 minutes to submit an intake form. It shouldn't take you longer than 20. It's really intended for us to get an overview of who's applying and what types of supports they might need to develop their application and to make sure we can answer your questions before you get deep into the application process. Oops. Number 3. So as soon as you submit your intake form on the application portal, you will be able to access tier 1, 2, and 3 application forms. And also, if based on your intake form data, you are invited to submit a non-competitive grant inquiry, you will have access to that as well. That might take a little bit of time to reach you. It wouldn't be immediate, but immediately upon submitting the intake form, if you have no other questions that have paused that process, you will immediately see links that can take you to tiers 1, 2, and 3. And we estimate, depending on how developed your project is, that it could take maybe 4 to 6 hours for putting in the information into the grant applications. Each one of the tiers are very similar in terms of the questions that they ask. So once you go through one, the other 2 will feel very familiar to you. And we've done our best to ease the burden on you and also ask the questions in a way that allows our regional advisory committee to make fair and informed decisions. Once you've submitted your application, please be available to respond to requests for clarification or additional information if that's needed. If we do, that could hold up the review if there are questions that we are waiting for answers to from you. Once once your application is finalized, it goes to the Regional Advisory Committee for review, and in 2 to 4 months from when you submit it, you will receive notification of what that committee decision is. If you are not selected, we will give you feedback and options for resubmitting. If you are selected, you will work with our Minneapolis Foundation program officers to finalize work plan, milestones, and budget. And once that's all finalized, you sign the grant agreement and you are ready to go. So a couple things in mind around managing federal dollars. These are, even though you will not be considered, grant awardees are not considered federal awardees, but you still have, because you're coming through us, an intermediary, but you still have to follow all federal guidelines about using government dollars. And so for what that means internally for you is that you want to pay attention to cash flow and have a clear, easy process for planning to submitting and tracking your invoices so that we can pay you in a timely manner. We suggest having financial systems in place that allow you to track and document every dollar spent. Ensure that and document that dollars are only used on allowable costs, which we will all share with you as you move through the process, and follow and document procurement guidelines, because for purchases over a certain dollar amount, you need to have show that you've gotten bids or quotes and that you have a rationale for choosing the way you've gone. It need not be lowest cost, but you do need to have a documented rationale. I'm just flagging these things for you. We will be sharing more details about this in the future. But these are the kinds of things to start thinking about. And then around project implementation, having project management staff and systems to stay on budget and make sure that you're tracking and achieving the milestones. And for folks that are planning to collect, gather, store, share, report on environmental data, there are some quality assurance requirements around that. And it could lead to the development of a quality assurance project plan. And so we do have an upcoming webinar to share details about that. So another thing just to keep in mind as you're planning on how to apply. All right, we're almost done, and then we can move to Q&A. I've just got, I think, 2 more slides here. So things to keep in mind. Please reach out if you need help. This is one of the cornerstones of this Thriving Communities grant making program, is that it's not just the grant dollars, but there are resources set up so that you can get the help that you need not just at the front end, but throughout the process. So reach out if you need help. You can come to us and our partners whom you've met for questions about the online portal, the application project process, the budget template, or grant requirements. We are not allowed to provide you any individualized feedback or support on developing your project idea, writing your proposal, or developing your budget. Thankfully, we have Technical Assistance Center partners that can help you with that. That would be the Big Justice Technical Assistance Center and the Great Lakes Technical Assistance Center as well, and we'll send those links to you. They're the ones that can help you that can provide support in developing your project idea and providing individualized feedback on your proposal and budget. Also, we'll love you please keep in mind that you should take advantage of this opportunity to resource your current eligible work that is not funded. You do not need to apply for a brand new project to be competitive for this grant. Make sure that you estimate the costs for managing this grant and include those costs in your proposed budget. What do you need on the financial, accounting, project management oversight lens? Budget for that properly, include that in what you submit to us. Plan on joining our upcoming office hours to learn about the additional federal requirements that I mentioned, both related to procurement as well as construction, human subjects research. That means if you're collecting data from individuals, you might need to go through a separate process. Not sure. So, I mean, it's just because you're doing it doesn't mean it requires that, but we will work with you to figure out if you do need to go through a human subjects research review and develop a plan for that. And similarly, related to environmental data collection, there will be quality assurance reviews for all projects and to monitor and make sure that you are collecting, managing, and storing data in appropriate ways. Final thing, if you do not need a unique entity ID to apply, but you will need it to receive grant funds. So go ahead and start your application now if you don't already have one. Upcoming events, we have next week office hours related to help you develop your budget, answer more of those questions around allowable costs. We also have quality assurance office hours, and our colleagues from Region 5 EPA will be presenting and answering your questions on that. Those and everything, these will all be recorded and shared. So if you can't make it, you can send us your questions in advance, but we will post these on our website so you have access to everything. And then we will be hosting weekly office hours. There's 2 more this month, and then starting in January, you can see them listed, and we will be sending you links as well so you can register for all of these events and send your questions ahead of time. And with that, I encourage you to keep track of our updated information at greatlakestcgm.org, which is also available through this, whatever it's called. And you can email questions to greatlakestcgm@minneapolisfoundation.org. And I'm going to look to my colleagues who are monitoring chat now and maybe bring them back on board to answer questions that you have for us.
Hi, Jumana, thank you. There is a question in the chat that has a bit of repetition to it. I'm just going to read the one from Janet Howard. It seems to be the most illustrative. Janet says, my agency is in a partially disadvantaged census tract with no categories, but it is adjacent to at least 2 census tracts in the same county that have categories that are eligible. Is it possible to include adjacent census tracts in the geographic focus for our eligibility? And that goes in line with the other questions about partial census tracts or partially inside of the boundaries on the map.
Thank you for the questions. And Dina, thank you for summarizing that. So our guidance from the EPA is that the projects that this grant funds have to primarily fall under the census tracts or blocks that are identified on EJ screen in orange. So that is the guidance we must follow. And because sometimes the answer to that is not entirely clear, our TIC-TAC, Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center colleagues have offered to help folks answer some of those questions. So let us point you to our TIC-TAC colleagues, and we can potentially follow up with you individually as needed if you're not getting the help that you need. You can email us at that website, that email address. Anthena, what else? Are you seeing anything else come through?
Plenty.
Okay, keep them coming.
There are several questions about local units of government. So I've seen questions about a county conservation district. I've seen questions about school districts. Is a publicly funded university, like a land grant university, to be a state entity, also considered a part of the state? So is that not eligible? So some clarity around a local unit of government.
So counties count as local units of government. The state designation is a little bit fuzzier, so let us circle back on that question around the state um, districts. I'm not sure about that one. And Ryan, Tori, or Joanne, if any of you know answers to these questions, please jump in.
I also see several questions about equitable state allocations and how much of the funding would be directed to the different constituencies. So maybe some clarity around that based on some of the previous presentations and an update.
Sure. We intend to try to get resources out across all of the 6 states and the 36 federally recognized tribes. And and we can't give funding to where we don't receive grant applications. So we would love your help to make sure that we get enough applications from every state and federally recognized tribe so that we can get resources out as equitably as possible. And what that means, we don't have a set amount, but we do have some guidelines. We know what about a sixth of the funding looks like, and so we are tracking that to make sure, for example, that one state doesn't get 92% of all of the resources. And that is where our regional advisory committee is going to help us find that right balance. But number one is that we cannot make grants where in places we don't receive applications. So encourage in your communities, rural, across all the states to send us their best applications so we can fund them.
I see quite a few questions about what types of activities are allowed. Can tier 3 funding be used for construction of a new school? What does increasing energy or water efficiency mean? And there are other questions like that specifically related to maybe those tier 3 projects, like what exactly does the programming entail or what may be excluded from that?
Great question. So I know one of the great things about this program is that we can be really broad, and I know that can be frustrating for people that want guidelines. So my I think what to pay attention to is to look at the intent. Is this a planning activity? Is this are you implementing a plan, or are you really trying to learn about the program? And even if your project doesn't directly look like it's named there, if it meets the other eligibility criteria, and most importantly, you can complete the project with the resources and the time frame that you've got. So very yes, we do not have strict guidelines or even priorities. We're not saying like, oh, we need to fund or distribute X amount of our dollars on X type of project. We really do want to be responsive to your needs. However, for a larger construction project, to just be aware that there are some cross-cutting requirements that come into play related to Buy America, Build America, fair labor wages. There's a few other things that come into play, but as long as you can demonstrate you can follow those requirements, complete the portion of the project in the time frame, and that it meets the overall criteria, but also sort of the general intention of each heading, we can consider it. But make sure that your project is doable. And I think one of our TIC colleagues put it very well when they said, when you think about your project, think about reducing the workload by 50% for that same budget to really make sure that you're not overextending yourself and that you can fully account for the costs of the project that you are trying to do. So we are looking for the ability to get it done in the right time frame. You do not need to add a lot of things to make it look like a big project, right? Tell us exactly what you want to do and how you're going to do it and why it meets the needs of your community.
This is an interesting question. So there are a significant amount of questions about the tier 1 severely capacity constrained funds. And people are wondering if there any clarity can be provided on the invitation process or how people get on the radar for that. And also if I think projects that may be part of other tiers could also use that severely capacity constrained funding. Like, can a part of a construction project be funded with that?
Okay, let me see if I can get through all of them. I'll see if I can also, excuse me, I'll see if I can pull up the intake form. So the intake form asks questions that help us identify groups, and it gives you an opportunity to self-identify for severely capacity constrained. And that's what we will use in that intake form for the invitation. It will be very clear. It's a quick list of drop-down buttons. You don't need to answer all of them. You know, even one category will allow us to invite you to submit eligibility. Submitting one, clicking one of those buttons allows us to invite you to submit that for an inquiry form. And that's where we are, well, yes, so let me say that. And that's for up to $75,000. However, those activities funded can only fall under tier 1. So I guess there's two things going on. There's the severely capacity constrained organizations that are invited to apply for those tier 1 grants that are non-competitive, up to 75,000. Those are groups that will be given priority consideration for the other tiers, but you cannot do a tier 3 activity with a tier 1 grant. So if you are doing construction, you cannot apply for a non-competitive award and use funding that's outside of what's defined under tier 1 related to assessment and engagement. And I also invite Ryan, Tori, Joanne, if there are any of these questions you'd like to take on and respond to, I welcome your thoughts.
Jemana, just a clarification on the questions about infrastructure and construction. Those projects have to be completed during the duration of the grant.
The piece of the project that they have applied for has to be completed. That's absolutely correct. All of the money must be spent during the grant period. So we would love what you can't do is put it into a pot of money that you use later. It has to be used up in that grant period. Anthena, do you want to keep walking us through?
Sure, I can do that. Maybe some of the more targeted questions. Is there an application review grading rubric that will be shared with applicants?
That's a great question. We are sort of finalizing the review rubric with our regional advisory committee. And I think that we should be able to share some general guidelines. What I can tell you now is that there is a lot of weight related to being community-based, demonstrating that the community that you're working in has guided the program. Like this project idea is coming from community. They're helping lead it. There's been a lot of engagement in the development of the project idea, and that this seems to be a very high priority issue for that community. So those are the things that you will, when the rubric does come out, that you'll see a strong weight there. And then the other piece is a strong weight around demonstrating that you can complete the project with the funds during the project time frame. We're unfortunately on a very tight turnaround time. We have 36 months to implement the program, and that means not only do we make all those grants, which we intend to try to get out in the first 2 years of this 3-year program, but that all of our grantees must also spend their money by fall of 2027. So that will be really important, is to demonstrate that you can have a plan in place and can fully implement the project in the time period and with the dollars, because there are limited opportunities for extensions. We might be able to grant some, but certainly not after that 36 months. And there are no sort of we can't give you additional money to help you finish your project. So it needs to fit into what the grant is funded for. If you complete your first grant and to or apply for a second grant within that time period, great. We'd love to be able to help any organization, and an organization and or the fiscally sponsored project can receive up to 2 Thriving Communities grants during this grant period. And when we say fiscally sponsored project, we don't want to penalize a fiscal sponsor for hosting a project. So the fiscal sponsor as a lead could get up to 2, and the projects that they host could each get up to 2 grants through this program, as long, of course, as the fiscal sponsor can demonstrate the ability to handle all of that funding and document and do all the needs, the necessary due diligence.
Jemana, do you want to address a question about what are unallowable costs?
Goodness, yes. I wonder if Kyla's on somewhere in attendance, and she asked me if she should be on tap to answer questions, and I should have said yes. So unallowable costs are first and foremost, you be very careful on how these dollars are used for food, because the EPA requires that their dollars only be used for light refreshments, and they have certain high level of scrutiny and guidelines around that. Also there are guidelines for travel. If you use these funds for travel, you have to do a high level of oversight and follow federal guidelines and requirements about per diem caps, hotel cost caps, and there are some things to navigate there with travel. Unallowable expenses are if you are working with a consultant and that cost is over the total cost of the contract that you would use these funds for is over $10,000. You would need to demonstrate that you've bid out that contract. It's not allowable for you to spend more than $10,000 on a consultant that you've already been using that you haven't bid out that process for. And there are probably other things that we will talk more about next week at our budget workshop that Kyla can weigh in on. And Joanne, is there anything else that you were thinking about that I should have mentioned?
I think very clearly it's for lobbying.
Yes, thank you. Also, no, thank you for that. My mind was going in a different direction. So not only lobbying, but if you are if you have a challenge to a federal agency, you can't use federal agency dollars for that process or for anything related to that. I wonder, Anthony, if more and more questions, every time I answer a question, more clarifying questions are coming through. I'm not watching the chat, the Q&A, because I get distracted easily, but I can imagine that the last 2 things I've said have led to more questions.
There's another question about a recipient has recently received $5 million in other federal funds. Does that mean they're not a priority because the budget is now over 5 million?
Technically, yes. And we do have a space in that intake form to tell us why you are still capacity constrained or should be considered as capacity constrained. So you have a chance to explain to us how, your exact situation so that we can understand it.
There's another question about match. Can these funds be used to match other federal dollars?
Yes, they can. I'm going to spotlight you, Joanne, so you can join us. I'm going to spotlight everybody. We can all be part of this, and Ryan and Tori, you can weigh in too. So, what was the question again? Match. Yes.
Match federal dollars to match other federal dollars or, state or private dollars.
Yes, this can be used as a match for those other resources. You can as a grant recipient of this, you would not be able to say this is a federal grant that you've received, and so therefore that can be used as non-federal dollars for our grant recipients. But you do still have to follow all the federal requirements. So just to note that, Pete. But yes, absolutely, we would. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to use this funding as a match for other projects, and you do not need a match for this funding.
And you're also eligible for other federal funds. This does not restrict you from applying for other federal dollars.
That is correct. We've got less than 10 minutes left, and I wondered, Ryan or Tori, if there was just anything that you wanted to add or respond to any of the questions that have been asked, or highlight a question that you think we need to answer before we sign off.
Jemana, we've been answering questions as quickly as possible in the Q&A. So that's what we've been focused on.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
There was another question about applying for the funds. Are people, is it not looked favorably if they ask for less than the amount, even though there's a maximum amount of funding?
No, that there will be no penalty for asking either for the full amount or for less. Most important is, again, to ask for exactly what you need and what you know you can spend during the time frame in allowable costs. That is more important than the dollar amount that you request.
Jemana, there was another question about whether and you answered this a little bit already, but for example, an education project, capacity building could apply for, say, a tier 3.
Correct. Yep. Yes, any eligible applicant can apply for any of the tiers.
Jumana, we got the hot button question, which I think would be appropriate to answer on this forum. Are these dollars secured? So if you want to take that one.
I will be glad to. And so the Great Lakes Thriving Communities Grant Making Program, the total program costs have been obligated to us by contract. And so for what we know now is that there's no reason to not go full steam ahead. So that was a lot of negatives. We are going full steam ahead because the resources are obligated to us, and there has been no reason to not move ahead. We are not sure what the future will bring, and so there's no reason to do anything other than move forward. Joanne, would you have said that differently?
I would just emphasize full speed ahead. It's our intent to get these grant dollars out as quickly as possible. There's a question about property acquisition. Does that include land acquisition?
It does. It does. And because the dollars have to be spent during the project period, there is you can't use it and then purchase it later. Also, I have understood that if the money is pooled, if you had $300,000 from another source and we're going to use $300 from tier 3, then and the money was sort of pooled, it means that all of the money needs to be tracked and monitored per federal requirements.
One more, I think, really good question. Can any of the funds be used to support the financial systems? So this is talking about those project management related costs.
Financial systems, yes. Project management costs are absolutely encouraged to be included. And that's part of the unique capacity building aspect of this program. We can include project-related financial management costs. So for example, if this project is 10% of your budget, you could reasonably attribute 10% of your accounting and other related costs to that. In addition, if there are specific needs, if you need to purchase a new system or do something new or different for this program, please include those costs in your budget. Those are exactly what we would like to cover.
Here's a question about technical assistance. What is going to be provided for the grantees to help them also support compliance with the grants?
Yes, and I'm going to open this up to my colleagues too, if they would like to share how they're thinking about post-award support. But yes, we do understand that there's a lot of requirements, some of which we are still trying to learn about ourselves. And so there, not only does our partnership intend to engage support from consultants with some of this expertise, we have connections to the EPA with quality assurance and some of and be able to access their technical assistance. We have regional grant makers as well as consultants that the EPA is putting on board related to some of this work. And we have our technical assistance centers and colleagues here in the region. So we are actively working together to answer those questions and make sure that every grant recipient has what they need once they receive the grant to navigate the requirements and get support and implementation. Anthena, Tori, or Ryan, do you want to say anything about how you're thinking about your aspect of support for grantees?
We don't know exactly what the need will be, but once we start to see applicants and grantees, we'd like to potentially even bundle folks together into a cohort and then provide technical assistance or budgeting assistance, whatever the issue happens to be. Would you like to take a question, a verbal question, Jemana?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be our last one, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, hey, I was trying to understand some of the questions around de minimis rates and fiscal sponsorship and all those things. And one of the things that you said was for tier one, so if somebody's tier one costs to administer this grant exceed the 15% de minimis rate, you can include those as direct costs. Because for a small organization that doesn't have everything set up, just having enough fiscal capacity to manage a federal grant can be way more, that making that leap is more than, it's more than 15%. That's acceptable, right?
Catherine, I would say that we would not consider those overhead costs. We would consider them direct program costs for implementation.
Perfect. Okay. And then if that organization is fiscally sponsored, how do you figure out um, the fiscal sponsorship rate? Is that figured out by the NICRA of the sponsoring organization, or is that figured out by the sponsoring organization saying, we looked at this and it's going to cost X dollars to provide you fiscal sponsorship support? How do you do that?
We had intended to have the fiscal sponsor and the sponsored organization work out between them what makes sense. I have not heard any requirements from our end that we have to impose on you that of a certain rate for that.
All right, thank you.
We will look into it. If something comes up, I'll let you know, but I have not heard anything yet that would require us to impose anything or require anything on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the great questions, and thank you, everyone. We are at time. I am so grateful to the over 300 folks that joined at some point or the other, and we had over 400 registrants. What a great turnout, what great enthusiasm from all of you. We will keep you posted. We'll keep answering your questions, and we look forward to walking down this road with you. Thank you and take care.